and are just some of the words that you may hear in today's podcast. Enjoy.
Hello and welcome to the Perfect Information Podcast, a board game podcast trembling the darkness that inhabits all of our souls, with me, Yorgos Panagatidis, and the one-time nocturnal lupine transformer, Ben Maddox.
Here are today's announcements. This afternoon's Find the Evil in You workshop with Margaret Thatcher, Pol Pot and the inventor of the bagpipe has been moved. Instead of the probatorium, please go to the room faintly smelling of that. Due to illness, Albert Fish will not be preparing today's buffet, but sous chef Jeffrey Dahmer has agreed to fill in. Note, those who have an objection to ABBA might want to eat in Canteen 5. And finally, a reminder that we remain an unequal opportunities employer and maintain a zero-tolerance policy on not taking drugs. Thank you.
Oh, for God's sake. I mean, I don't even know what to use.
Top of the morning to you, Benjamin. How are you? Would you like a cup of coffee?
No, I wouldn't.
Why? You look a bit grumpy.
You haven't worked here very long, right?
Well, 14 decades, I think.
And the fact is, you don't understand the stresses I'm under. So at the weekends,
right.
I like to unwind. I like to do some diabolical stuff.
Well, I unwound as well.
And I
went upstairs, I went hiking. I went to the mountains, saw the sunshine, scared some locals.
What the bloody hell are you talking about? The Mountains of Death don't have a sun.
Oh, no, upstairs, I've got a visa.
You what?
Yeah, it's great.
How the bloody hell did you get a visa?
That was a commendation thing because, since we've worked together, our numbers have increased exponentially.
I've been applying for visas for the last 2 millennium, and every time they say, well, sorry, Benjamin, sorry, it's just not possible, there's such a backlog. And you've been here, 140 years?
Yeah.
And you got a visa?
Well, I've had a visa after, 40 years, yes, but...
What?
Should we just start working?
I've got one question for you.
Right, go on.
The Cardassians are ours, right?
The Cardassians are Trek villains. They are fictional. The Kardashians, I think there's a split up. I think some of them are, and some of them are not. I'm not sure which.
The Trump is theirs, right? Hastening the old, end of times and things. He's his, right?
No, we had some problem with the paperwork, and You know, sector level 7B?
Yeah.
It's not talked about a lot. The dangerous idiots?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I thought they were all his, the dangerous idiots. I thought the scheming Machiavels were all ours.
No, the dangerous ones belong to us, the idiots belong to him. Her. Them. I don't know.
To be honest, I haven't seen him since his blue period. So, when the world was young, yada, yada, yada. Anyway, all right, let's get this shit done because I want to go and have a drink. So, who have we got? Top of the pile?
Ooh, that would be Jessica.
Good. All right, let's get to... What did you say her name? Jessica? Janine?
No, Jessica.
Oh, Janine's coming later. So, what did Jessica... What's she here for?
It's a very interesting situation. So, basically, she was playing a game, or rather, she was about to start playing a game, and then she realised there were rules that needed finer points. They needed to be certain edge cases that needed to be articulated. They needed to be sort of thought of, discussed, and people need to come to a decision. And the problem, the great skill there lay in figuring out how to talk about things that are so unlikely to happen, are not actually going to be attempted by anyone involved because they just don't care. But she felt the necessity to spend 2 hours talking about these things and arguing about them before the game started for the sake of having thought about them.
Well, couldn't we just
Yes. Justice is important here, yeah.
Deal with them when they happen, right? I mean, that's how it works, isn't it?
Yes, but if that happened, we wouldn't actually find them here. They would just be, warriors.
So explain this to me.
Yeah.
Explain me the motivation behind this, right? Do you think Jessica is someone who is genuinely concerned? Mm-hmm. Or do you think that Jessica is someone who is planning to utilise these things later on to their advantage, they want them clarified first? Or do you think it's someone who's just demonstrating their own perceptiveness and ability to pick out obscure little things that make them look better? Where would you put Jessica? Which box would you put her in?
Well, if it's one of the first two, we wouldn't be talking about her now, would we? It's definitely the latter.
So I mean, what game was she playing when she committed this grievousness?
Well, Twilight Imperium, which we have different feelings on. I think it's awful.
I think the notion of playing a game for 8 hours that can be decided by the roll of a d8 right at the beginning before you start is a gloriously diabolical thing. I think it's wonderful. It's the great invention of our master. It's certainly in this realm, anyway. But where do we stick her, though? Where do we stick Jessica?
I am not sure. It might be... Maybe it's a question of avarice. Level 4 would be that.
Why explain this? Why is this avaricious?
Well, it's the desire to feather yourself, to sort of paint yourself as something who's greater, grander, in the hopes of gaining some advantage out of it. And the way I see it, most advantage is usually determined by monetary value upstairs, so seems like a fairly logical connection there.
I mean, avarice is all very well and good, Gregorius, but
please, Greg, we're friends.
Avarice is all very good, Gregorius, but I would say level 7 violence. Not because she's violent, but because her actions promote violence in others. I mean, these kind of people. I'm not
going to start in debate about free willing.
Let me explain myself, right?
Yes, go on.
These people who highlight their own intellectual demonstrations above everyone else's communal enjoyment inspire in those up top the kinds of bile that rises to the throat and singes the esophagus to such a degree that probably, most of the time, most murders are about that, right? Certainly within the board gaming world.
Yes, most murders in the board gaming world are about bile.
A society replete with murder. So I would say whack her in level 7. Level 7 violence. Makes sense, right?
No, well, but
can you believe after thousands of years I still have to look up the chart to see what the levels are?
Unfortunately, I can, yes.
I'm not very good at my job, Gregorios, if I'm honest. I lost the desire after the first millennium.
Maybe
you'll lose yours too, Gregorios. You're quite sunny. You're getting visas. You're going on mountains. Yeah. Soon enough, it'll drag you down, Gregorios. Soon enough, you'll be like me.
No, because I still get to see the mountains.
I drink about 7 pints of devil's sputum a day, Gregorios.
Anyway, I'm thinking I don't really see violence because in the end, people are responsible for their actions. So if you inspire people to do something, they still need to make the choice to commit violence. But I think you're making a good point. The idea of projecting your intellectual capacity in order to impress others, I think seems to imply this need to do that seems to imply that she is maybe not convinced of her intellectual prowess, which means she's actually lying, which means
level 8?
Level 8. Fraud, yes.
Oh, whack her. Let's fucking whack her in level 8. Done. All right,
excellent.
Now, who have I got here? Hang on a minute. Roberto Gregorius. Briefly, his report says Rodrigo is here.
Roberto Rodrigo? That's a weird name.
I know.
Yeah. Did he ever try to be a superhero?
He's a Catholic.
Oh, I saw no.
So it says here, right? Mm-hmm. During a game, he spent a sum total of 15 hours planning out his turns, whilst other people did a sum total of 9 minutes.
Wow. Which game was that?
This was One Night Ultimate Alien, and right. so that's why he's here. So where should we stick him?
That's difficult. I'm leaning towards gluttony, to be fair. Level 3.
Explain this to me. This to me.
It is about soaking up this desire of the experience and, filling yourself with play at the expense of everybody else. I would say. I think it's closer to gluttony because it is about your satisfying your own desires.
So what you're trying to say, that if you're a person, right, who considers it so important,
right,
their optimization of their turn, right, is so important that they're willing to take up the lion's share of the time without any relation to what the other people are doing.
Yeah.
I mean, basically so ensconced in their own brain and so self-absorbed and narcissistic.
Self-absorbed and narcissistic, yes.
That they're not willing to see the obvious frustration of the people around them.
Yeah.
That they're consuming gluttonously everyone else's time.
Pretty much, yes.
See, I've got an issue with this, Gregorios, right? I don't think this is a real thing. People give it a name. It's called AP. I don't think it's a real thing. I think they call it AP and it sort of absolves people. You know, they have an issue, they have a cognitive issue, it's so important to them. But I think it's just rank selfishness, Georgios.
I
think it's
it is.
rank Gregorios. I think it's... I forget your name sometimes. I can't remember whether we're Greek Orthodox or Catholic sometimes, Gregorios, you see.
Well, I grew up Greek Orthodox, so obviously. I mean, I don't know where you grew up. I mean, you old enough to be what?
Anabaptist.
That explains so much.
Before the diet of worms.
It
was a terrible... I mean, the canteen at that time was dreadful, Gregorios.
See, I disagree, though.
You think this exists, right? Do you,
I think it exists, and I think that's why Roberto Rodrigo is here. Because it is a real thing. Like, this place is a real thing.
Well, that's the thing. I agree on the gluttony definition.
Yes.
But I just don't agree with the case diagnosis.
Well, the fact that it's been named one thing or the other is, I think, immaterial.
I mean, I would put it as selfishness.
It is gluttonousness. But it's a very specific slice of selfishness which you can easily label. That's the great thing about this.
Well, that's
how lawyers work.
I look at the rest of his infractions, Roberto Rodrigo, and I look at the rest of his infractions.
Does he have one of these expanding names?
He does.
So whenever we talk about him, he gets an additional name.
Roberto. How difficult is that?
I'm not going to try. It's just going to be longer.
I'm looking at his list of infractions, and it also says waiting at the top of escalators and having a bit of a look around.
Okay.
It also says walking slow and sort of zigzagging. It says getting angry when cyclists are on the road. Gregorios? I mean, this all shapes up to be selfishness, right? I mean,
I'm not sure about the cyclist thing, but the rest I agree with. Yeah, I mean, yes,
I believe that, right?
Yes,
that all the people who are accused of AP, right, are actually fundamentally selfish people in every other aspect of their lives, Gregorios.
I'm not sure about that. I mean, to be fair, our focus is the gaming division, so we're just looking at selfishness within the gaming division, and there I agree with you. Yes, selfishness, but
would you make up your mind?
What?
Sometimes you want to chat and talk about things.
Yes.
And now, when I disagree with you, you're just like, oh, can we get back to work, please?
Yes.
I'm trying to engage with you as a fellow being.
Yes, but I'm trying to help you get a visa.
All right.
We're not going to do that by chatting about our feelings. You know I don't care about these things.
All right, so it's gluttony, is it?
Yeah, I'm voting gluttony, yeah.
All right. Right, who's next?
Inmate 44, who chose to take on the role of rules explainer.
You're going to have to explain this to me. The printer printed it out wrong and now it's in Aramaic. I don't speak Aramaic, Gregorios.
You should really go to these workshops at some point. Instead of drinking yourself for sleep.
No.
But, I mean, it's great Aramaic.
But Jane, the Aramaic teacher, she's so boring and she's got one of those hairy moles on the side of her face and it freaks me out, Gregorios.
That's her mouth. It's with a huge freak accent.
That's strange. You know, you don't see that. You used to see that more sort of animated animals back in the they call them the Dark Ages, but I mean the last time I was up there was sort of 1362. It seemed perfectly bloody light to me. I don't know what they called it that. Anyway, so explain him to me.
Well, basically there were two stages. Sat down, played a game, paid no attention at all. Whenever it was his turn, he made up his mind quickly, so that's pointing in his favour. But he couldn't remember even the simplest rules.
Right.
He didn't even try to remember the simplest rules eventually. He just prompted others to explain to him what it was he was supposed to do. It kind of became a thing. He reformed, like in his mid-20s, he did reform.
Right.
Returned to gaming, like in the mid-40s again. And picked up huge, heavy games.
Right.
Like proper heavy games.
Like picked them up or played them?
No, he played them, he collected them, started introducing them to people, but he didn't do any preparation.
Right.
So he ended up sitting there, looking at the rule book, and every couple of minutes going, looking to his, playmates and going, either I don't know what to do, and this doesn't make sense, and have I explained this before? Basically, he did not know what he was talking about, and wasted everyone's time repeatedly.
I don't seem incredulous, Gregorios, and seem like I don't know what I'm thinking about, but couldn't he have just prepared himself?
You would think that.
I mean, I don't.
Yes.
But I have you around who does all my work for me, so that makes sense.
Yeah, we're going to have to maybe look at your case file at some point.
To be honest, I'm experienced here. I know the workings. You are my protege. Therefore, you have to take... I have to do the higher intellectual labour while you're doing the basic stuff. So don't complain, Gregorios.
I'm not complaining.
Good.
Excellent.
So where do we stick him?
I'm leaning maybe towards...
You say towards very strangely.
Yes.
Towards.
Yes, towards.
Where does that come from?
It's a local dialect.
Which local dialect?
Well, the northern outskirts of Babylonia, obviously.
You seem derailed, Gregorios.
I do seem derailed.
Carry on.
Possibly level 6.
Level 6, it would remind me again, Gregorios.
Heresy.
Why would it be heresy? Explain this to me.
Because gaming does require the use of intelligence, the use of your mental faculties.
Well, go with me. You might not agree with me here, Gregorios. I'd go full 9 on this.
9?
Full 9. Because everyone sits around, right, and if you say, I'm going to introduce this game to people, right, and then you don't do it, that's a betrayal, right? That's a betrayal, isn't it? That's a betrayal of trust, and you end up... I mean, these mortals...
Right.
They only have a limited amount of time, Gregorios. So, they have this, for us, I mean, it's a piss break. For them, it's an entire bloody life, Gregorios. And then these people who don't prepare, and who just turn up and go, you get your... and you put it on and then, right, should we start? They're full 9s. They betrayed these people. They wasted what little time they have, Gregorios.
Well, to be fair, we didn't have a full 9 for quite a while. I'm not bothered. Yeah, sure, send him to 9.
Whack him in 9?
Whack him in 9. Whack him in the 9s.
Prisoner number 144. Number 9. Who am I talking to?
I don't know. Are you still trying to get in bed with John Lennon? He won't show up.
I'm really annoyed because with the wife beating, I thought the wife beating would have him down here in a second.
No, the adulation actually
They overlook a lot, don't they?
It is an old system.
And I've no idea why peas don't have a chance in the 1970s, but clearly they bloody don't. Anyway, next one, Gregorios. Alright, so here we've got Jacob Ponsonby III.
Poncy?
It says here his real name is John Smith, but he's changed it to Jacob Ponsonby III, Gregorios. What do you think that says about him?
I think he's a bit of a douchebag.
Divvy is the word we used to use back in Diabolical District number 32, where I was detubed, Gregorios.
You were detubed? That's weird.
Well, back in my day, it wasn't so advanced. They just, grew us on an agar plate, whacked us in a tube, and then demon out.
See, I had a proper job application. I had an interview and everything, and I had people talk to me. What are your plans? How long do you think you're going to stay here? Do you want to move on maybe later?
So you could have been
retirement plans. You
could have been an agent of diabolical retribution, and you chose to come here.
Actually, I could have worked for either team.
Why did you come here?
The scenery.
Have you seen this room?
Yeah, I like red.
I mean, I was detubed.
Yeah.
Growthed for a couple of millenniums.
Right.
And they just whacked me here. Here's your office chair. Here's your locker key. Make sure you clock in and out, otherwise we'll dock you 15 minutes of diabolical devil juices.
You keep telling me about these things. This sounds really weird. See, I'm having perfectly nice dinner in my room, watching some TV. I put on Netflix recently. Very nice. Play some games if I want to. Invite people over. It's all very, very, relaxing.
Who's your father?
I'm not at liberty to say.
Right. So anyway, right, we've got this fella. Oh yeah, Jacob Ponsonby III. He only plays games of a certain character.
Oh, let me guess.
Gregorios.
Is it heavy?
Well, we've got this fella here.
Or is it sophisticated? I think that's the pronunciation.
I think that's how he pronounces the word.
Sophisticated.
And it says basically here, literally everything that isn't published by 3 publishers who publish 7 games about trains once every 3 years. They're printed out on A4 paper and cost €75,000 per copy. He refuses to play them.
Unfortunately, rampant idiocy is not a sin.
Right, so where do we stick him? I'm at a loss here. I'm angry. So when I'm angry, I find it very difficult, Gregorios.
That is true. It's hard to say. Well, it's not level 1, clearly, because he is involved. He has been sort of baptized into the fire of gaming, so that's fine.
Well, the thing is, the beautiful thing with this system is him upstairs.
Yeah.
No one's in limbo. It's great. If you ever want to just, have some time on your own to fucking scream, get up to limbo. There's no one there. It's empty.
Are you sure?
No, because he's very big on the old original sin, right? I mean, literally in the old wumos. I think that's the original Greek term. In the wumos, right?
Right.
He put the seed of sin in them. So instantly, unless you do all that stuff. They do the hand movements up there. I don't know. He likes the hand movements. I'm not sure about it. You get put into one of these levels. It's brilliant. So limbo, empty. Well, I scream in there a bit.
Yeah. Well, I've talked to her, and you know what I think? It's not just one person. It's a committee. That's what I think. It's a big cover-up. They have the. I firmly believe they have a similar problem with the software.
Right.
They might have tried updating it. I think they have at least a dozen competing mechanisms in there. Nobody knows what's going on. Nobody knows who's responsible for what.
But I thought the 3-in-1 thing was just kinky sex.
No, apparently that was the first time it completely went bonkers. I mean, how does it even work, 3-in-1?
It makes absolutely no logical sense whatsoever.
I mean,
anyway.
Apparently there's this guy with the spaceship and a volcano, and it just makes no sense.
I mean, this whole 3-in-1 thing sounds like a way of trying to fold in polytheism into a monotheistic structure to me. Anyway, where are we sticking him?
Ooh, that is difficult. I'm leaning... Actually, I'm feeling a bit harsher today.
Right.
I'm going with fraud. Again.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is,
Level 8.
What annoys me about it,
yeah,
is that you have this... It's a fundamental misinterpretation about what the game is for, right?
Yes.
The game is not about demonstrating your ability. Well, it can be. I mean, it can be a demonstration of your ability to overcome this intricate machine, but it can be other things too.
Yes.
And it seems very blinkered, unimaginative to me to say, oh, only these have value because only these can generate an experience.
Well, only these allow me to demonstrate my superior intellect.
Right, and it doesn't seem to me to be genuine. It just seems to me to express a desire to identify as something, right?
Maybe. Yeah, no, I can see your point, and yes, maybe it is all about, presenting a sense of self, which, again, I think we established with precedents with the rules.
Well, level 2.
Level 2.
Lust.
The
desire to be thought of as greater than one is.
No, I think we have to be consistent here.
What do you mean?
The projection of a false image we did label as fraud.
Well, the projection of a false image might be heresy.
Oh, that's a different false image, though.
But it says here that he has...
I'm not going to argue theology with you now.
Well, we're not qualified for a start.
Okay.
I mean, I suppose you read the manual when you came in.
Skimmed it.
I got past Let There Be Light, and quite frankly I went and had a drink. But alright, if it'll get me out of here quicker and up to limbo for a good shout.
Yeah, fraud. We have to be
welcome in fraud. Yeah. Alright, level 8. Level 8. Alright, who's the next one?
Yes, I think that's the end of the first shift. Excellent. We have Bob.
You'd think they'd be more imaginative with their names, Gregorios.
Well,
back in our day, my day.
Well, they are file names, really. I mean, to protect the innocent and the families, and keep sort of fear amongst people, reading the transcripts alive. We don't use
alive.
Names. Well,
reading the transcripts alive.
No, fear. Keeping fear alive.
I think we can all get behind keeping fear alive,
exactly.
Can't we?
Quite right. So basically, if people read these transcripts and realize who we're referring to, if we're referring to somebody, they realize, all right, this doesn't apply to me, and whoops, fear is gone.
All right, so what's he done? She done? He done? She done? They done? We done? Who done? Me done? You done?
Yes, well, we have a situation in which Bob sat down repeatedly with people.
Sitting down repeatedly is not a crime, is it?
Well, it depends on what you sit down
Is he
on.
going crazy?
No, I
suppose the Sibian. If you repeatedly sit down on the Sibian, then that's it. That he don't like that. That's pleasure.
Anyway, yeah. So what he did basically was sit down for a game, sometimes with newbies, sometimes with experienced players, optimized to his heart's content, which is fine, but intentionally, purposefully, and joyfully excluded any other considerations in his actions, which is to say, he focused on one single issue, which was generate victory points,
right,
or achieve victory condition.
Okay.
Ignored everything else there is to the gaming experience, which is the so-called social level, the kind of thing that, you know, one of us really excels in this job, and the other one just looks at the other angrily until they stop talking.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Neither do I.
I don't think I excel in this job. I mean, I'm all right, but I don't think I excel in it. And you don't look particularly angry most times. You're quite sunny, which, considering your surroundings, is a hell of an achievement. But as I say, it'll grind you down into the floor. So, where should we stick this guy?
I'm not sure. Well, let's go through the list for a second. Let's exclude the options that we can't use. I mean, he's not going to limbo clearly because he was fully aware of what he was doing.
Frankly, if I can get people out of limbo, where I can have peace and quiet to scream at myself, then, you know, he's not going to limbo. Not on my watch, Gregorios.
The question is level 2, lust. Is the motivation lust? Did he sort of indulge in lust? And I think that case is hard to make, really.
No, I don't see that as lust. Or maybe the desire to be the best. That's not sexy, is it?
But even that implies that he cares about others.
Right.
So we go to next level, the gluttony, who starts engorging themselves with something. And again, there's nothing there really to...
It does say he's a fat bastard on his file.
Yes, he's big-boned. We're using the new terminology now.
Oh, I just can't get my head around it.
Yes.
First of all, it was, kill the Canaanite, and I was alright to say, you bloody Canaanite. And suddenly, Canaanite's out the window, can't call someone a bloody Canaanite anymore. It's a person of Canaan origin. He's bloody outrageous. They're a Canaanite.
That is true. But there are not many of them left anyway, so...
I tell you what, this theological correctness is running rampant in this organisation, Gregorios.
So we have avarice.
Is he avaricious? Does he desire money? Well, he does desire points, but it's not money, is it?
It's not. Well, it's almost as useful. Yeah, no,
skip avarice, avarice.
Anger, level 5. That's really difficult. I don't see that.
Makes me angry.
Yes, again, but I think we've established that, the effect you have on others is not the sin that you yourself commit.
All right. Skip anger.
So now we go to heresy. Does he work? And this is where I'm starting to go a bit. That might actually apply. Are we talking about somebody who breaks central tenets, central commandments of gamerdom?
Is it heretical?
Yes, a case could be made that
What would be the orthodoxy in this case then that he's breaking?
That games are social, and to be social means to interact with others. So basically, if you exclude interaction in the way of not really considering how others are affected by your actions.
But wouldn't you consider if you consider gaming to be something that is about solving a puzzle within your own mind?
Yes.
Then that's not heretical, right?
Well, yes, in that would kind of make sense if you're talking about a game where the effect you have on others is limited or almost non-existent. But if you're talking about games where the effect on others is central to the gameplay, is central to your consideration, and you never even consider the possibility that what you do has a negative effect on others, then I do think that you're acting antisocial, and as such, acting against the orthodoxy of gaming.
All right, let's put a pin in heresy. Violence. Is he a violent man, Gregorios?
You know my stance about physical violence. It makes me nauseous. I don't like it. I'm more of an emotional, violent person.
I mean, to be honest, back in the old days...
You didn't have emotions, I know.
Well, no, we didn't need them.
That is true.
We had a crow. He would peck out people's livers every bloody day. Simple.
Yeah.
Have you done this? Liver man.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't see the futility of existence. He's a fucking stone. Push that fucker to the top of the hill. It's going to roll back down, mate. Probably roll over you sometimes. I mean, we used to sit there and put bets on how many times, it would roll over him.
Yeah.
It was great. It was great days. No, people like you come in, youngsters,
Yes.
with their cyber minds. And you're thinking, oh, emotional torture. Oh, I don't get it. Anyway, carry on.
So violence,
Fraud.
Well, no, I don't think it qualifies for fraud, really.
No, it seems to me quite honest, though selfish.
Yes. Actually, I think we might have another case for level 9, betrayal. Because what happens here is you invite people with the promise of having a good time, of having an enjoyable time, and then when you sit down to play the game, you do the exact opposite. You use them, or don't use them, for your own enjoyment, and do not care what kind of effect you have.
Well, to be honest, I did get a memo through the other day.
Right.
Saying that level 9 is being underutilised and the blokes down there are getting quite fractious and bored.
Yeah, well...
So, I mean, any excuse to funnel them into level 9's a good one, I reckon.
Well...
Right, it's fucking level 9.
Excellent. I think that's about it.
Are we done?
We are done.
Right.
We made it.
Brilliant. Well, I'm going to go and piss off Gregorios.
Okay.
I'm going to nip up to Limbo and have a scream.
I'm gonna go. I think I'm gonna take advantage of my visa, walk around a bit.
You make me sick.
Yeah.
Clean up to Sector 6. There has been a Beelzebub evacuation in Sector 6. Repeat, clean up to Sector 6.
Hi, I'm TC Petty III, and this is Deep Design Halloween Special with TC Petty III. Hi, I'm TC Petty III, and your creepy, spooky host for a very special Halloween-themed edition of Deep Design. Prepare to be chilled to the bone and frightened by the ghoulish apparitions that haunt the Deep Design Mansion. What is that now? I hear the low moaning of a malevolent soul in limbo. I'm a scary, spooky ghost. I am terrified by your presence, foul demon. What ghoulish japes will you commit on this evil night? Ooh, I'm a child molester and want to suicide rape you. Whoa, hold the fuck on, Ghost. That is not cool. I also don't understand how that works. Ooh, everyone you've ever loved will someday die. I only give women cunnilingus while they're on their period. Ooh. That's not even scary. That's just disgusting for both partners. Ooh, what's the best thing about 12-year-olds? I don't care. When you get their hair wet, they look 9. Ooh. This is the worst show I've ever done. I don't vaccinate my children, not because it causes autism, which I believe it does, but because I want to watch other people's children die. I systematically oppress African Americans because they are all criminals. When I murder someone, I make it look like a suicide and hide Nazi paraphernalia around their home so that their closest friends and relatives feel morally conflicted when mourning for them. Ooh. Dude, alright, I get it. It's all legitimately terrifying and racist, but I'm voting for Donald Trump as a protest vote. Depression is a myth, and it's just a reflection of the weak will of the individual. Get the hell out of here. What the shit? I don't tell my sexual partners that I have herpes. Motherfucker. Anyway, Halloween is a special time of year where the macabre becomes the norm and the sinister smiles of cruel costumes provide gothic release for families around the world. Oh, thank God. A different apparition appears. What do you want with me, ethereal vision?
I'm the ghost of your mother, TC, and I blame you for my pancreatic cancer. Woo!
Alright, I get it. You're making a point, TC. Horror gaming is this weird genre where we embrace the atmosphere of a familiar and campy definition of terror while being sure to ignore real problems or legitimately terrifying scenarios. And because of this, and your focus on reality and practical advice, you are terrible at horror. But I love horror. And in this episode, we'll talk about all the things that make horror games mediocre and how to make them as traditionally poorly as they have always been. Board games aren't scary. They can be spooky, they can be tense, they can be grotesque, they can be covered in blood, and pieces may be placed on a stretched, stapled canvas of human skin. but unless they introduce other media to aid with the experience, it's rarely, if ever, anything more than reading The Castle of Otranto. If you're an uncultured asshole, The Castle of Otranto is what many consider to be the first horror novel. A giant helmet falls on a guy. Why is that scary? It's a terrible novel, but if you imagine you were a white middle-class aristocrat in the 18th century, wow, would this controversial novel make you swoon with the emotions of a commoner. Yes, I just called horror board games as frightening as a Horace Walpole novel. This Halloween special is fantastic. Now, before I continue, somebody out there is going to disagree. There's gotta be some way we can make board games scary. And to that I say good luck. The best thing we can really do as game designers safely is to try and mimic the successful elements of horror in other genres where a participant can actually become scared. Because if you are an adult and become scared by board games, you are a failure as a human being. So let's take a moment to delve into the psychology of eliciting fear. True, irrational, pee-your-pants fright. Fear is our instinctive reaction towards avoidance of pain and the great unknown, which means it's tough to make a board game or any form of artistic media that creates an artifice where players feel empathetic surges of fear for the pain being inflicted on the characters, or dread for the unknown results of story events or any other random outcome. Maybe this is personal, but I've never been scared by a novel since I was 10, and movies can become intense, and they can have cheap jump scares, but I used to watch Friday the 13th movies as comedy when I was young. To be honest, nothing has ever really gotten me worse than video games. So let's take a look at what I consider to be one of the only consistent sources of real fear in an artistic medium. Although, I will accept Five Nights at Freddy's as a close second. Slender Man. Slender Man is not just a game, but an entirely internet-based modern urban legend. Look it up, it's actually pretty interesting. But also, not even just one game, but because of its spotty Creative Commons public domain status, several games based on this exact same premise have been created. And the premise is strong enough that anyone who knows to stay the hell away from this game. Slender Man is the worst because it combines three absolutely perfect elements of emotional manipulation that make horror work. First, it creates atmosphere. You are alone in a strange place with suitably macabre imagery, a forest with tall trees, an empty hospital, a barren city with cars left behind. No one is around but you, some hastily scrawled notes, this environment to explore, and Slender Man. Second, it uses jump scares and the anticipation of jump scares. Slender Man stalks the player. He doesn't attack in the normal way that one might expect. In fact, he never appears to move at all. He is simply there, staring at you. He is wearing a tall black business suit. His face is white and featureless. Sometimes he is embellished with a halo of moving black tentacles like wild ink splotches, and his gaze always pulls the camera towards it, forcing the player to jerk away or be lured into his eternal stare forever. The sound of static, a crescendo of white noise heralds his appearance, so when you turn around the next corner, there he is, staring intensely, watching your every move. Third, with every step closer to beating the game, the frequency of Slender Man's visits increases. This overwhelming sense of dread and tension makes every movement absolutely agonizing. Normal everyday actions like opening a door transform into nightmarish obstacles that you absolutely dread. A fence post, a sign, a tree trunk. Every aspect of the environment begins to look like Slender Man. And when he finally gets you, when he is only a foot away and the camera suddenly jerks in his direction, the white static merges with a deathly wailing scream and the camera zooms on his pale face. Oh god, I can only play the game for a few minutes at a time. I recommend Slender Rising for the iPhone and Android. It's the best and the simplest, and it makes you look like a complete idiot getting scared from staring at your phone. So using this model, the key to terror is creating an atmosphere that is ripe for our psychological impulses towards fear, to surprise players with familiar and sometimes unfamiliar elements, and to increase tension, dread, and suspense with every action, making the negative feedback loops worse and worse. How can we apply this to board games? Well, I'm glad you asked. Setting an atmosphere for terror. People tend to lapse into certain psychological modes when introduced to familiar stimuli, and they begin to subconsciously associate emotions with environmental cues. People are more likely to be scared when they assume they are in a scary place. I know that until I became scared by a video game, I didn't think any media could be truly scary. But afterwards, if you put me in a similar situation, my heart rate would go up significantly. Board games have the ability to create wonderful atmosphere through several techniques specific to them. Art. Pretty pictures on paper still has an allure that video games cannot match. While you, as a game designer, may not have say in the final product's art quality, art gets better and better each year, and for a generic horror game, crap is not acceptable. Choose the tone of your art carefully. There are a lot of different horror subgenres, just like there's a ton of heavy metal subgenres, and not all horror fans like all kinds of horror. Some horror is evocative and subtle and psychological, while others are gothic and monochrome, while others cover the walls in chunky entrails. Choose the horror subgenre you enjoy the most and embrace it fully. Because if you get any Tim Burton in my John Carpenter, I will fucking cut you. Components. There's a reason why intricate baby sculptures for adult children sell so well on Kickstarter. They look cool on the table and they represent an appropriately thematic element. It's something that video games, and most especially books and movies, cannot provide. Real, tangible pieces to ogle and maneuver around. Make sure you design with these ungodly plastic souvenirs in mind. Cardboard standees do not cut it. Story. If you can't scare people, then you gotta do the next best thing. Tell them a creepy story. Like an actual story. My least favorite horror games have no story. I think everyone's least favorite horror games have pasted on themes with no story. Even roll and move horror games with a DVD like Harbingers or Atmosphere had a story. Board games bridge the gap between video games and novels in this respect, and that is how they should be perceived from a game design perspective. Board games allow players to take an indirect but active role in major events, and also give players agency to fill in the imaginative off-camera moments along the way. You do shit, it affects things, but you gotta make the pew-pew sounds. The bonus for board games is that these stories can have so many different new set pieces, characters, and major events that it allows the story to play out in hundreds of different ways. Sometimes a good thematic flavor will define the experience more than anything else. Easiest way to implement story? Cards with words to read out loud. Best way to implement story? Thematic and mechanical cohesion. Notice how most games use cards. Finding a good mechanic that matches the theme is hard. You see a ton of cooperative or team-based games in the horror genre for exactly this reason. People are terrible at keeping multiple storylines going in their head, so if you want high-five moments or moments of absolute dread, the best way is to get a group of gamers to squabble over their next actions. Also, it's so much easier to tell a cohesive story if all players make choices collaboratively to push it forward. You don't see many counterexamples because it's hard work, and game designers are lazy, and the consumer market does not reward creativity. But if your game is not cooperative, still keep this idea of working together in mind. There should be some central focus or story that ties all players together, or makes them care about what other players are doing. The focus is the main story, but everybody should feel like their own story made an impact. Story is so important to horror games, in fact, that I'd like to talk a little bit more about emergent stories that occur when mechanics fit the theme. Here's some good examples. The Bloody Inn is a fantastically well-realized horror game that does not subscribe to the usual tropes. So good, in fact, that many people refuse to play it because it's based on substantiated real-life crimes. An inn in France where owners collectively decided to murder visitors, take their money, and bury their bodies. Players become these owners and strategically bribe visitors into becoming accomplices, kill, loot, and hide the bodies under buildings that you create to expand the town. There's no way to win if you don't participate in the horror. It is something immersive that is very horrible upon reflection. Mall of Horror is a negotiation game that forces players to negotiate for the lives of their characters. When a location is outnumbered by zombies, one player is, quote, voted to be eaten while the others escape. So very human, very vicious, and horror. Escape from the Aliens in Outer Space uses hidden roles and hidden movement to obscure alien players from humans in a race to exit a space station. Keen use of deduction and strategic use of truth and lies make for some amazing, tense moments as the aliens move in for the kill. Fate of the Elder Gods has curses. When you gain a curse, the player to your left draws a curse and keeps it face down. They, and they alone, know when you will trigger this curse, and they will taunt you mercilessly the entire game until they flip it when you have taken the appropriate action and laugh in your face. Here are some bad examples. Zombies have you flip over a new tile and put some zombies and supplies on it. The number is written on the tile. Last Night on Earth has line of sight. Line of sight is fucking annoying for such a stupid game. Also, you can't shoot through windows. Countless games draw a location card with a small storyline for different locations that are visited and then sometimes require dice rolls or a very specific item that allows you to succeed or fail by complete happenstance. Countless games! Each character has a set of attributes. These attributes make them better or worse at certain types of actions. Roll dice and augment by the attribute's rating to determine the success of these actions. Countless games! I kill me some creatures. I kill me some more creatures. I get a weapon. It breaks. This is so scary. I kill me some creatures. Mounting tension and surprise. Board games can't do cheap jump scares, so they need to rely on the unknown for emotional manipulation. Horror games should be filled with anticipation and tension. Finding yourself in an empty hallway with doors to open on either side is fine, but if you ever find yourself saying, well, I have 2 actions, but I can't really get to that door on my turn, so I guess I'll just pass my second action. Or, it doesn't make sense to open that door because that's not anticipation, that's just boredom. Good ways to elevate tension levels as the game proceeds include limited or dwindling resources available with increasing costs to obtain them, press your luck elements with horrific consequences, and possible traitor mechanics. Yes, some people dislike these, but it is a horror game, and it definitely adds tension between players. Good ways to implement surprise include unlocking plot twists that shift the game's story in a new direction, hidden player roles and agendas, and I guess you can pepper in some dice rolling and card draws if you need to, but at least attempt to do it in a mildly creative way, please. So the point of all this is, if you're trying to make a horror game, you should recognize your audience and make a game that panders to the tropes of the horror genre with a high emphasis on story and tension. If you're trying to make a horror-themed game, you should make sure that your game's mechanics are intimately related to the thematic actions. If upon reflection your actions during the game do not induce a morbid humor, then you probably just made a bunch of horror fans unhappy. I'm just saying that when you sit down this All Hallows Eve to participate in your annual blood orgy and board gaming marathon, consider the multitude of downsides to these B-movie games inspired by B-movie sources. We don't have to sacrifice story for gameplay or competitive gaming for story or paste it on horror themes for ingenious marriages of theme and mechanics. Horror games could be more than just people saying, have you played Arkham Horror? They could actually unsettle you with their actions and storylines. They could force you to smile while committing unspeakable atrocities. Isn't that what the holidays are all about? So this Halloween, embrace that nostalgia. Stay up late tonight, invite your friends over to wear hastily made pun costumes based off pop culture. Turn off all the lights and watch the flicker of eerie shadows as they flit across your living room window. And set the stage for your grandiose horror game experience by candlelight. And then just end up getting drunk and playing Cards Against Humanity. Spooky.
Is that your name on the list? Well, get in there then. Get to the bar and get buckled. Welcome to the guild.
Georgios. It's all go here, isn't it?
I'm always amazed that we show up here and you're always tired and worn out and achy, and I feel like I'm talking to a pensioner or something.
Well, especially at the moment, I'm particularly exhausted because me, T, and R have been rehearsing for their biggest night of the year, Georgios.
Really?
They're playing here, Georgios.
But they always play here.
But it's the Halloween show here, Georgios. Can't you see the decorations?
I'm not seeing much of a difference.
They've got, like, pumpkins, except they don't use pumpkins. They use butternut squashes, Georgios. And they've got neon drinks.
But they always have neon drinks.
Okay, yeah, but these
orange.
They're black and orange neon drinks, Georgios. Janine, yeah. I've heard a rumour.
Is it something you drink, like rhubarb beer?
It's rumour. I'm trying to be mysterious, Georgios.
Right. Incomprehensible, mysterious. Same thing to me.
Anyway, I've heard she's coming dressed as a sexy witch, Georgios.
Which one?
We're not doing this. We are not doing the Abbott and Costello bit. We're not doing it.
Right, okay.
Anyway, no, and I hear she's coming dressed as a sexy witch, and I, for one, am quite excited to see her form, Georgios.
I'm just clear this up for me. Is there any female costume that does not have the prefix sexy to it?
Not anymore.
Okay.
Sexy garbage collector.
Yeah.
Sexy abattoir worker.
Sexy zombie.
Sexy halal.
You need to unpack this joke. You know, I'm a simple bloke who only reads shit.
Well, that's how they say hello in Arabic, isn't it? Halal. Halal, you too. How's it going? Yeah, not bad. What have you been up to today? Oh, I don't know. I drank some tea and that, like black tea. Don't have milk in tea over here in Arab land. Oh, right, nice one. Did you, eat some couscous? Well, yes, that's all we eat here.
Truly, you're a cosmopolitan of unknowable scale.
I know. Halal, how's it going? Yeah, halal to you too.
All right, so we've established, we've started a war with France, we started a war with Denmark, and now apparently we're starting a war with the entire Arabian Peninsula.
Hey, they're very busy at the moment, Georgios. They're very busy with their own stuff. I don't think they're listening to this. Anyway, yeah, so she's coming as a sexy witch, and we're playing doing this gig, and tonight is the night, Georgios.
Then which? I don't understand. What night? Which night? What's
the Halloween night, Georgios?
Yes, you mentioned that.
Well, I told you previously. I've been writing that song, that love song for me and Janine. I'm debuting it, and she's going to be there as a sexy witch serving the neon drinks. I'm going to sing it.
Is that the song where you rhyme luck with suck?
I mean, there's a lot of rhymes with the uck suffix in it, suffix in it, Georgios. And so, yes,
like buck. And
I'm not getting into it now. You'll have to wait until I fucking perform it later, and I melt her heart, Georgios.
I'm sure there will be some melting going on. I'm not sure it's hard.
Anyway, let's move on. What was the guild question for the last one, Gregorios? What?
Yes, very, very meta, and it's totally not a mistake he made. No, it was intentional. Well, the question was, why should we attend conventions, and what do we miss if we do not?
Oh, what did Will Brasher, first poster, say?
First poster, Will Brasher said, "Bomb. That's better."
He looks like he's got like a metal haircut, like long hair.
Oh wait. Now I have to zoom in. Oh yes, he looks very. Oh wait! He has a perfect information micro badge.
Of course he does. He's a star. Will
Clearly.
Brasher.
He is someone of sophisticated taste, knowledge, and insight into the gaming world. But he's also a fan of Walking Dead. So let's move on.
So what did he say?
He did talk about how. Well, let me quote this important bit here. Cons really make you feel like you're part of the bigger community, like attending a gig or football match or any large event. To which I say, nuh-uh.
Well, I think cons are different. I think because, I mean, you could argue this, but I think there's not a performative aspect to it. You're not going to watch something. You're not, and it's not. I mean, a football match or a play or something like this is part of being a community, but it's much more about passive consumption of something.
Sure.
Whereas cons is about getting out there, being active, forming it yourself. You create the thing yourself. Your presence, your participation is what it is, right?
That's true. I mean, that's just expanding the experience of a game into a large convention. And I don't disagree on the point that it is all about feeling part of the community, but I feel with a gig or a football match, you're part of the community of the audience, but not of the creators, like you said. But in essence specifically, and plugging my own piece there, that sounds naughty.
I hear you like to plug your own piece, Georgios, quite extensively.
Yes, I'm quite good at it.
Into various things. That's why your hair is such as it is.
Possibly, yes. I did write a piece about my experience in Essen. I did try to articulate how it does feel like you're part of a bigger whole. You're part of this huge group, this huge mass of people with a certain shared aspect of identity, in which case we're all gamers there. We're all passionate about games to varying degrees, and that is a great experience. That is something that you do miss out on if you only go there to play games, or if you only meet people in conventions to play a lot of games, have a lot of games explained to you, maybe buy one. Being in Essence for me was very much about sort of immersing myself in gamer-ness. Yes,
I mean, like you said in the thing, you're with your tribe, essentially, aren't you?
Yes.
You sort of feel there's a lot of people who just share similar interests, and you can suspend that sort of outsiderness for a weekend. You don't have to explain to people everything. It's like when you work a particular job, and you meet someone who also does that job.
Yeah, you have a very different connection.
The jargon is instant. There's no explanation. Mm-hmm. There's no sort of going around the houses to try and dumb down what it is for the person who doesn't understand. For the lay person, no one's a lay person, or very few.
No, even if they are, they're at least they're interested enough to hear more about things they don't know about. You can sort of assume that these people have similar experience or comparable experiences to what you've had with various games. I mean, if I've had a great experience playing a social deduction game, I can talk to somebody else who also had a great experience with social deduction games. And it doesn't even have to be the same game, it doesn't even have to be the same group, nothing like that. But you both recognize in each other, this is exciting about a social deduction game, or this is exciting about a worker placement game, or this is exciting about any other type of game that's there. And the idea that no matter where you turn, you will always find somebody who can talk about the same things you want to talk about, who can speak with some expertise about these things that you're passionate about, that's just great. You don't feel like you need to sort of wave your way through how do I get this conversation in a direction where I feel comfortable and where I can talk about something that I find interesting in the hopes that the person I'm talking to finds that interesting as well.
Right, absolutely.
This all disappears in essence. This all disappears in huge conventions. This is basically, you can forget about this part of your social interaction and just talk about...
Focus on this part.
Yeah, focus on the things that you feel passionate about.
Being with your tribe. So, what does Aaron Kaiser... Oh, I like that surname. I wish my surname was Kaiser.
Really?
Georgios. It would confer on me the status I feel I deserve.
A bullshit artist played by Kevin Spacey.
So you say... So did the Kaiser so say? Anyway, carry on. What did Aaron Kaiser say?
You really have no faith in your own punchlines, do you?
I just think I live on a cerebral level above most, Georgios. So I have to explain them. And once they... And you know this established rule. Yes. A joke explained is a joke doubled in humour. That is
the rule. Yeah, that is the rule. That I can confirm that is in fact the rule. In all my years in joke school, this is what our teachers have sort of beaten into us.
Your joke school was crap. My joke school was better.
No. Aaron Kaiser says he doesn't think it's crucial to the hobby.
Yeah, he says it's not crucial to the hobby, and I agree with him. It's absolutely not crucial.
Yeah, playing games is crucial.
Is the crucial part, yeah. And geography can preclude you, especially the big ones. I find it difficult to get to Gen Con or Origins. Yeah. And you know, people in America find it difficult to get to Essen and things. It's absolutely not crucial.
But it's nice to see that some do make the effort. It's always great to see people from all over the world coming to this place.
And quite honestly, if they're that rich, Georgios, that they can come to Essen, why aren't they showing us the Geld love? Sorry, Geld is German for money. Why aren't they showing us the money love, Georgios?
Because one, we're not dancing in sexy underwear in front of them.
Well, I could.
I know, and I think that's the main reason why they don't.
The problem is, though, is the underwear objectively sexy? If I put it on me, does it then cease to be sexy underwear?
No, it's never the underwear. It's always the person inside it.
Right. So I go to one of these bra shops, right?
Yes.
And I say, I want the sexiest pair of pants you've got, please.
Right.
And they go, oh, we've got these ones. These are imbued with extra pheromone sexiness, right? And then I put them on.
Yeah.
And I, waggle about a bit.
I've never had.
Do they cease to be sexy?
Yes. I've never had this problem personally. I think every bra I've worn, I just look fantastic.
I mean, I'd imagine you do. You've got fantastic breasts.
I do.
But anyway, I don't think it's crucial, no. But what it is, attending conventions for me, is a different aspect to the hobby that is invigorating and exciting and a lot of fun and out of the norm of your sort of normal interaction with people. And, the internet and Twitter especially, I think board gaming resides on Twitter to a large degree, is just a wonderful platform for feeling insta-welcome when you go to a con, because you've had these people that you back and forth with on Twitter, and then when you see them, it's I mean, in my experience, rarely awkward and interesting and fun. And even if it is awkward, you've got a game sat between you, so you can actually just focus on that until the ice breaks.
That reminds me of two things. One, I had this great fortune of running into two of the listeners who are quite possibly listening to the show as well.
Miscellaneous Hip?
Yes, Miss Chip, and of course Peony, who does not post on the guild for reasons that he explained to me in detail, and which I unfortunately
completely forgot.
No, I signed an NDA.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. So that was really great. So basically, what I'm saying is, yes, this experience of meeting people you've had some sort of interaction with, like even just short interactions, even if it's in our specific, very, very, let's call it privileged case, where we do this recording and people listen to us and they think...
9 at last count.
9 people listen to us.
You got Miss Chip.
Yes.
Penny,
yes, and his friend.
Bob Roberts, yes. Nigel Nigelson,
yes.
Denurna Begurger,
yes.
I think he's foreign.
I think so.
Randolph, Jacob, Nurgle, and Spot. There's all the listeners there. Thank you for listening to the show.
Pretty much, yeah. Everybody else just jumped ship. No, but meeting these people and having them, getting the chance to interact with them, getting the chance to meet somebody who can tell you, like, I'm going to sound very, very conceited, but basically they liked our show, and I'm very, very grateful for that. Again, it's fantastic feedback. The idea of somebody going like, I find this interesting, I find this funny, I find this entertaining, keep doing it because I appreciate it, and that just gives me a warm, fuzzy feeling in my tummy.
But you don't need to. I mean, obviously, that's a specific.
You don't need a podcast
need
to go to a convention. Yes,
but you do, as you say. It comes back to that thing. You're with people who share your common interest, and all of that sort of. And because and the convention setting, because everyone knows they're at a convention, they're particularly open to new experience. They're particularly open to mixing with other people. So you have a heightened social interaction over those couple of days, which is great. And if you don't get the chance to go, I mean, that's absolutely fine, but I would recommend, even if it's a small convention, you try and get
I think the interesting thing is that these conventions also sort of add this level of inclusivity, this felt inclusivity into a larger group. Basically, instead of sitting down with your friends, 4 or 5, up to 10 people maybe, who you regularly invite over to your place to play board games with, it's all very insular. It's just your small group, it's just your small hobby. Occasionally you go to the gaming store and there are 2-3 other people you don't know, and then you go back, you go to a convention like this and you realize, no, it's not just your group. It's not just the small droplet of people who like these type of board games. It's hundreds of thousands of people. And that this recognition of, this is not, I mean, it's still a fairly small hobby, but it's not the niche it used to be. It's not this complete outlier of leisure activities that people used to think of. I mean, if you go there, you recognize there are enough people out there to actually say, no, this is a legitimate hobby. This is a proper hobby. This is a proper pursuit that people can have fun with without, I don't want to use the word ashamed because I think it's completely wrong here, but without having to feel weird for being very, very niche, very unique, very weird.
And it could be that your group is made up of a particular type of person, and you assume that your particular type of person is what makes up the body of the hobby. And when you go to a big place, especially like Essen, you realise that's not the case. It's all types of people, all ages, all demographics.
Yes,
and me. So, right, we're going to move on now to Isaac Shalev, right?
Yes.
Now, Isaac, I assume you listen because you post on the Guild, right? I'm just going to have a little word with you. Isaac, Kind Fortress. I think we discussed a gingerbread man covered in syrup before in the Kind Fortress. I'm sure your fortress is lovely, made out of marshmallows, has unicorns, but the Guild of Perfect Information, Isaac Shalev, is not a place where you shill your own podcast on board games. You come to our guild to glorify us, Isaac. We are the glory, not on board games.
Yes, on board games is not a podcast that you should be shilling on our show, which is called Perfect Information, and not on board games, which Isaac Shalev is creating.
Oh, of course, Isaac. If you want to go on the On Board Games Guild and shill the Perfect Information podcast, feel perfectly free. We consider that a public duty.
So what you're saying is On Board Games is a podcast by Isaac Shalev, and it's being shilled on our guild and on the show. Is that what you're saying?
He's shilling the podcast On Board Games.
Is he now?
In our guild.
I am outraged. Is it On Board Games?
On Board Games.
On
it's
board.
Called.
I am.
With Donald Dennis.
I can barely contain my anger.
Yeah, so basically what we're saying, Isaac, don't shill On Board Games. Isaac Shalev and Donald Dennis.
Yes, which is a podcast which you can probably find on iTunes, I'm sure. I am. I don't want to talk about this. I'm just going to faint out of anger.
Anyway, so Georgios, I've got to go now because we've got one more rehearsal. And I got to retouch the lyrics.
Is that the one rehearsal where you don't actually cover your ears?
We don't cut. Well, they call them cans.
Right.
Ear defenders.
Ah, right.
I mean, because when I'm singing, they wear these particular ones.
Right.
I think they're Bluetooth because I can't see the cable going into the thing. So they, it just looks like they're just, they're like earmuffs, but they must be Bluetooth when I'm
probably,
singing.
Yeah. But that's why they're nodding, or smiling.
That's right.
Slightly out of sync, I find, but I mean, I'm sure there's a reason.
I mean, sometimes I'm like, what do you think, guys? And they sort of squint at me, and then they sort of have a moment realization, take them off and go, oh, sorry, what was that? And I assume it's because, they were so engrossed with my beauty that they're distracted.
We have to keep in mind, the club is in the basement. I mean, the Bluetooth connection, the Wi-Fi connection, probably not that great in the basement, even with the holes.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so that must be it.
So I fully expect, Georgios, that next time we do this, me and Janine, Bacco, together.
Right. I'll bring the chocolate ice cream.
Say goodnight, Georgios.
Oh, you were the poodles already.
if you want to play games at Halloween, Georgios,
I might.
Scary games that make you wee your panties. Yolo-Games.com, Georgios. It's got you covered with one of those scary sheets that makes you look like a ghost.
I find it difficult for white people to wear scary sheets.
Especially the pointy ones. Look at this, Georgios. You like zombies?
Who doesn't like zombies? Because
you like Rick Grimes? Well, Dead of Winter, Long Night, Georgios, is only $49.99. That's euros.
Yes.
$49.99. That's nothing, Georgios.
Yeah, I think that translates to about £85, right?
It's about £1,000 now.
Oh, it's so much.
It's about 1,000 of your pounds now.
Well, that's
you know, this whole Brexit thing. Anyway, so if you want a Dead of Winter Long Night,
which I hear is a standalone expansion, you can play it on your own. You don't need the original game for that. It has some very clever mechanics, assuming that it basically works like the original, which I think it does. And my personal favorite about the original Dead of Winter was the split win conditions, and I'm quite certain it's in Long Winter as well. I think while I'm talking about it, I think I might actually want to try that game. I kind of cooled on Dead of Winter, but I think I want to give Long Winter a try.
It's called The Long Night, Georgios.
Well, that's even worse.
Of your soul.
Well, in that case, I don't want to play it.
Have you found anything scary on the website, Yolo-Games.com, Georgios?
Yes, I did. I found Don't Mess with Cthulhu.
Oh, Cthulhu is scary. He is going to swallow the world.
Yes, he's so scary that there's plushie of him available. But Don't Mess with Cthulhu was originally a Japanese game called Time Bomb. It's a very simple, basically a micro game, but it's really clever. It's really sharp, short and sharp. I highly recommend it. I think the art looks quite nice. There's some indie boards and cards do have nice, thick
always nice
tokens.
art.
Yeah, so I do recommend it. It's $16.99, which is actually quite good.
I know lots of people out here have bought the new Mansions of Madness. Well, there's an expansion, Georgios. Suppressed memories. Like those memories I suppressed of my youth and that squad of uncles that would come and visit, Georgios. $49.99.
Well, suppressed memories sounds like a dangerous concept for an expansion.
Well, I suppose they're really suppressed, and when you open the box, they explode out.
See, I'm kind of worried that
like that snake in a can.
Don't you worry that you put it in your wish list and you forget that it was there, and then suddenly it shows up and you go like, I have no memory of this.
Who are you?
Exactly. I would also recommend giving it a try because it disappears again forever, or at least until somebody picks up the license again from Games Workshop's grubby hands. Fury of Dracula 3rd edition. The 2nd edition I actually own, I am proud to say. And it's despite having some clunky mechanics.
Yeah, a couple of flaws.
It has one very clunky mechanic.
Yeah, that it's shit.
It's one card that's badly designed. Yes, I'm not going to argue.
I mean, I think Fury of Dracula only has one flaw, Georgios. One flaw.
Let me guess, it exists.
That it's shit. That's its flaw.
For people who actually do enjoy games and don't have some sort of weird semi-religious hang-up about hidden movement games, Fury of Dracula actually works quite nicely. The combat system in the new edition has been revamped. It was clunky in the 2nd edition. It includes more things to do instead of having these long turns where one person sits down and waits for things to happen. It has updated graphics. It's a decent game if you do like hidden movement games and the idea of hunting down and beating somebody up. So basically, if you're a big, huge bully, is what I'm trying to say. So if you are a huge bully on Halloween, play Fury of Dracula. It's only $69.99, which again translates to how many thousands of your pounds?
Loads of pounds.
Loads of pounds.
So, if you don't want to go out on Halloween and grope someone in a sexy costume, I don't understand why you wouldn't, but there we are.
Yeah.
Go to Yolo-Games.com. They've got you Halloween covered.
That sounds nasty.
I'm Nick Mariner, and this segment is all mine. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. And happy Halloween! If you're listening to this episode on the day it's released, and of course you are, you've been staring at your RSS feed for the last 7 days just waiting for the next time you see that perfect information logo. Today is Halloween 2016. Man, do I need this day. It has been a hell of a year so far, and Halloween is my medicine, the day I look forward to more than any other day of the year. I love the candy and the costumes, scary costumes, not topical puns, and mini skirts with cat's ears, and I love scary movies. Let me say this again so the point is as clear as possible. I love scary movies. I've wanted my love of scary movies to cross over into board games since I started getting more deeply into the hobby, and I've found the results to be mixed. Some of it comes from not everyone in our hobby sharing the same love of this other thing, that other thing being horror. When a group of comics and I wanted to put together a role-playing campaign, the guy who would eventually become the DM and I wanted it to be the Call of Cthulhu system. But we settled for D&D because we didn't have any other takers. By the way, side note, if you ever want to go on some truly batshit make-believe adventures, play any RPG with a group of stand-ups and improv comics. It is a glorious good time. But mostly my struggle to cross the streams in these two hobbies is because horror has not translated as effortlessly into board game form as some other fictional genre, say science fiction or fantasy. And here's why. The thing I want to talk about this week. Our board gaming hobby has yet to solve the fear problem. Now pay very close attention to the fact that I didn't say we have a horror problem. Let me make that distinction and give some personal history before I come back to games, because, as previously discussed, this is my 10 minutes, and I want to talk about me, and you can't stop me. I love horror, as much as pretty much any other form of escape or entertainment available. I used to stay up late and watch movies I wasn't supposed to watch, or go over to my friend's house for sleepovers because his parents either didn't know or didn't care if we waited until they went to bed, and dug into the back shelf of their VHS collection for Child's Play, or Silver Bullet, or some Toxic Avenger trauma masterpiece that is totally not appropriate for even most adult eyes. I used to stash Goosebumps books in my desk and read them when we were supposed to be doing our math lessons. As a reminder, this is why my degrees are in the humanities. In the summer of 1994, when I was 11 and about to turn 12, I spent my summer at the public library doing two things: getting every collection of Far Side and Calvin and Hobbes comics I could get my hands on, and renewing my paperback copy of Stephen King's It. It took me all summer to read, but I read all 1,100 pages of it despite the fact that I was way too young to be reading most of it. The next summer it was The Stand, and somewhere around then I read these words for the first time: "The man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed." And I was transported to a world from which at least a hunk of my brain has never returned. I am a rabid Stephen King fan, and from his work I tumbled into the usual, finding Lovecraft eventually, spending my time in the Romero trenches and doing the zombie thing before the zombie thing was the zombie thing. Even going so far in grad school once to writing my own screenplay treatment for a werewolf movie instead of doing my homework. Spoiler, it wasn't very good and never even got mailed into a studio, let alone made. Even as I write this, I have the file opened on one half of my screen and The Descent on the other, because it's October, and October is for three things: baseball, Ray Bradbury, and horror movies. My least favorite critique of a horror movie, though, is, well, it wasn't scary. If you don't like horror as a genre, I get it. It's violent. It's often pretty gross, especially these days as we try to find new shock value. And even more often, it's low budget and terribly produced. But I also write papers on horror movies for work and think there are things to learn from it. My last paper was on slasher films set in schools. P.S. Try being a college professor who spends all weekend on Netflix watching sorority house massacre movies. There is no way my name isn't on an NSA list somewhere. But one argument I will definitely make is that for a horror movie or story to be good, fear needn't necessarily be the motivating factor. Three films that come to mind immediately are Shaun of the Dead, Tucker and Dale vs. Evil, and Fido. None of these movies necessarily seeks to evoke fright in the audience. All three are comedies, and very good ones. But one could not possibly argue that they aren't horror, because they borrow from the typical generic tropes that make horror, created in some sort of survivalist scenario against an aggressor or presence, the violent deaths of central characters remaining an open and expected possibility, etc. My favorite horror movie of this year so far has been The Witch, because it immerses the audience through a narrative of isolation and an absolutely A-plus script in the language of colonial puritanism that evokes the daily lived fear of the angry god that dominated the era, and also posits a moment in which, well, Maybe sometimes there really were witches. It's fantastic. Yet often when I recommend it, a friend will come back to me days later and say, that wasn't scary at all. I disagree, but that particular argument won't ever grow any corn precisely because fear is such a subjective emotion. But hey, I'm in minute, 5 or 6 at this point? Isn't this podcast about board games? Where do board games come into what I'm saying? Well, I said all of that first to suggest that it's not as if board games haven't figured out how to make horror games. There are plenty. Just this year we've seen published expansions for Dead of Winter and Betrayal at House on a Hill. Both of those games do clever things to implement the guiding principles of horror as a genre. I also happen to not really like either of those games, but that's neither here nor there for the moment. We have games like Zombicide and Ghost Stories from Antoine Bauza. Also Last Friday and Hit Z Road that just came along. If I really pressed myself to think of one, I might even be able to come up with a Cthulhu-based board game of some kind. I'm sure there's at least one out there. I can't imagine anyone at this point could effectively make the argument that our hobby hasn't committed to providing horror games for horror fans. But I didn't say the hobby has a horror problem, did I? I said our hobby has a fear problem. Fear or fright as a visceral experience is not necessary for horror to be horror. I just said that in case you weren't listening. But film, television, and books definitely have found a way to elicit fear in at least a portion of the horror genre. Some movies are kind of scary, and some are very scary. To this day, I can't go into a dark bathroom because I saw Candyman just a little too early in life. That is a fright that just celebrated its 24th anniversary. Board games, though, don't do this, for the most part anyway. And I have some ideas why, roughly crafted as they might be. First of all, I don't mean to suggest that horror-themed board games don't elicit at least some level of tension. Quite a few do this, and some do it very well. I happen to love Ghost Stories despite my general distaste for dice rolling as a central component of strategy, because that onslaught of creepers is real and unforgiving, and I never ever win at that game. I think the best example connecting theme to that tension of survival and unknowability of what lurks around the corner is the legendary Alien Encounter system. Alien is a top 5 favorite movie of mine. Not just favorite horror movie, top 5 favorite movie, period. In that game, even though thematically some of the mechanisms don't make sense, like having to fight more than one xenomorph in the first scenario and blah blah blah, I don't care, use your imagination, you know the drill. The game definitely pits players against a system quite like Ridley Scott's original masterpiece, in which a team of under-equipped jobbers move around the Nostromo and know that at some point, somebody is probably going to get eaten by a big sweaty monster. But it isn't frightening. At no point in the game do I feel fearful. I love the game, but that isn't what it does to me. Can a game, I wonder? When I was a kid, we rented the Friday the 13th game on the original NES, and that game scared the shit out of me. There was something about walking into a cabin, finding a guy in a hockey mask, and inevitably seeing that screen that read, "You and all your friends are dead," that built a genuine scare for us as kids, who also waited until mom and dad went to bed and watched Children of the Corn, a terrible choice for kids who grew up surrounded by corn and wanted to be scared by it. Why is it so possible for a book or movie or TV show to elicit fear and not games? I think at least a portion of the explanation is environmental. Sure, you could have a movie on in the background like I have now, or watch it in the middle of the day and get much less of a spook from it, but in the dark, in a theater, or at home with the lights off, a scary movie can be genuinely scary, making you question every bump and creak you hear, and see shapes moving in every shadow for hours, or days, or years. Those of us who love horror feed off of that feeling. It's titillating. I have never played a game that made that happen, because most games are played in a well-lit parlor room or wide-open game store, surrounded by people playing Magic the Gathering and shouting about Firefly and who smell kind of bad sometimes. The general practice of our hobby, game night, usually doesn't lend to an environment of fear. Another explanation you'll likely hear about why movies are scary and not games is that movies are a much more passive experience. That gets us close, but I do have to say I disagree with the passivity of film. A filmgoer can't affect the outcome of the movie they're watching, so there is a certain helplessness there. But on day 2 of any pop culture studies class, we'd get into hermeneutics and post-structuralism and all the branches of theory that reveal active meaning-making of the receiving audience to be constant and essential to the process. There is, however, an element of games that doesn't exist in the act of watching a movie or reading a book. The win condition. I'll tell you why I don't fancy Betrayal at House on a Hill. That game is a heck of a good time in its first half, where players are running around the house picking up items and reading flavor text and setting up the scenario, but then the haunt happens, and you all read the specific situation you've created, and it tends to be something spooky, and you say, oh my gosh, there's a giant spider in the house, or whatever. But that's always the point of the game, where you realize one player has gotten way more powerful than any other player by virtue of the items she's found, and whichever side she's on will be the winning side about 90% of the time. Even if we were playing it by candlelight to Carpenter's Halloween score and everyone spoke like Vincent Price, that would still be the moment where I was transported out of the theme and realized I was playing a swingy game dictated way too much by lucky card draws, and the horror element that was once creepy now just became thematic set dressing for me to ignore entirely while I watched a nigh predestined outcome unfold. I think the reason board games can't, and probably never will, elicit fear as an emotion is because, as I've said on this show before, winning is the primary objective. When in pursuit of a strategic victory, whether cooperatively or not, players are never going to be fully immersed in fear because they remain too directly in the driver's seat. I heard Rob Zombie once give an interview about his theory of making horror movies, and he said something I thought was smart. The audience should never feel safe. There should never be a moment where they don't think anything can happen and they aren't helpless to change the outcome. In movies, that works really well, especially his. In board games, it doesn't. If a player can't exert some control over the system, can't pursue a manageable path toward victory, or reaches a point in which the structure of the game is either completely random or they are now helpless to affect its outcome, it's going to be called a bad game. And designers know that, so they tried very hard to avoid doing it. Being engaged, being in control, might make for solid game design, but that is a stark opposite to what it takes to make something scary. If at any time an audience member feels like the outcome of a movie is predictable or palatable, it will cease to elicit fright. What's the solution to this? Will a game ever be legitimately frightening? I don't actually think so. But I'm willing to have all designers send me free copies of their best shot. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm off to fulfill my usual Halloween day rituals. Reading The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, watching Sleepaway Camp, and eating those little candy pumpkins until someone has to call an ambulance. I'm Nick Mariner on Twitter at TheGoodMariner, and my board game blog is iCallYolo at iCallYolo.com. Thanks for listening.
It's crass, unsophisticated, and emotionally manipulative.
It's this week's review. Come, sit over here, Boberle. Let your uncle tell you about the time we hunted the secret Hitler. It was the old days of the Weimar Republic. It was Germany. I was part of the government back then, and it had come to our attention that there were fascists among us, attempting to overthrow the state and install their own leader into power, a real Schwanzstück. It was our patriotic duty to stop the rise of the fascists. So we elected governments to pass laws, one president and one chancellor, one to sign parliament's laws, and one to pick the one to enact. Those days were full of mistrust and paranoia. We didn't know who among us was secretly trying to subvert our ideals of freedom and liberty, but it was incredibly difficult. For every liberal law we managed to get passed, a fascist one would catch up with us. Everybody was protesting their innocence. I didn't have a choice. There was nothing I could do. Finally, it was my turn to be president. The fascists had already executed one suspected traitor, and we were about to lose our majority. I knew there was only one person I could trust, so I nominated her chancellor. When I gave her the laws to pass, she looked at me with anger and fear. Had I betrayed her? Was I secretly one of them? She enacted another fascist law, but now I worried. Had she been the Hitler all along? Had I been duped? Did I open the gates for the fascists to storm in? She dutifully replied that she was not who I had feared, but now I had the power of life and death in my hand. I could determine who to execute to put an end to all this, and either protect the liberals or cement the fascists' hold on our country. I hesitated, and then I shot Hitler in the face.
Yeah, skip to the end.
It's the one-sentence review.
Although beautifully conceived and well-intentioned, like the inevitability of history, Secret Hitler repeatedly marches to the same conclusion.
Secret Hitler is not so much an improvement of the Resistance, but a slightly different take that deserves to be called its equal.
Georgios? Ooh, what's that in the corner of the room?
I don't know, but it's eating peanuts with its nose.
So, Georgios, elephant in the room.
Yes, it is a brown one.
It's wearing a big brown shirt.
Yes, it is.
Should a game be made in which a player is asked to play the role of Hitler?
Well, first of all, the game already exists.
Right.
Obviously. So it has been done, it can be done. Is the one, I mean, obviously this is the point where a lot of people feel uncomfortable for understandable reasons, feel that they can't allow themselves to play the game, or they refuse to play the game, again, as understandable reasons and legitimate. But the question is whether it's a good thing that we do have a game tackling this chapter of European history, or specifically this tiny little chapter of German European history.
Well, I don't think it does tackle this period of history particularly, but it's not a historical simulation. And what this game is like works of satire. It's using a different milieu to explain the present. You could swap out Hitler for Trump. You could swap out fascist for Republican. It's talking about the modern electoral process, I think.
Okay.
And I think this game suffers, especially the perception of this game suffers from the people who made it, right?
Yes, I agree.
So they assume that the Cards Against Humanity guys made it, so it's going to be fatuous and it's going to be irreverent and it's going to have words like cock wobbler in it and it's going to be altogether silly and disrespectful. Now, do you think it is?
No. First of all, while the word cock wobbler did show up when we played the game, it was...
That's just because I use it a lot.
Yes, but generally, insults do get hurled around in this game. I could imagine these games becoming quite tense, actually, not because of the subject matter necessarily, but because of the game dynamics themselves, because you lie to people, you accuse them, even though you know full well you're lying, this kind of thing. This can be problematic. I think there's something very interesting about, I compared it to Resistance before.
Yeah.
Resistance deals with spies and freedom fighters, resistance members, whatever. These are terms that you can sort of vaguely, cognitively grasp, but you do not have any sort of emotional response to it.
Yeah.
A spy can be a good thing, can be a bad thing. A freedom fighter can be good, but a resistance man can be a good thing, can be weird, whatever. If you call somebody a fascist, if you immediately know they are the bad guys.
Well, I think where this does have a connection to Cards Against Humanity, is they're both irreverent, and I think this game has an irreverence to it, and it asks you to be irreverent. It asks you to take the mantle of the most horrific regime in history, right? It asks someone to be Hitler. Now, the point is, why? Are they making a fatuous, childish fart joke point? Or are they asking you to ask more serious questions? And I think the reason this game succeeds, thematically speaking at least, is that it does the wonderful mechanic in which, as a liberal, you might be tempted to take a fascist policy because it offers you a power that may help you achieve your ends, is very clever.
Yeah.
And mirrors what happens in real life. It's a satirical exercise. And why I think this game does work thematically, and while it isn't fatuous, and it's just not a series of Nazi jokes, is that baked into the very design of the game, you are replicating the mistakes of history, and implying that even in this localized, unimportant group of people sat round a table, you're already making the mistakes. So is it saying this is an inevitability? Or is it saying we need to work hard to avoid this? It's asking those questions, and that's why I don't think having Hitler in it is necessarily a bad thing. It's a very good thing.
No, I agree, but there are 2 points I want to mention here. One, you said that it is not about its history. It's not about the time, and I don't think I quite agree. I think the dynamics, like you said, that emerge in the when you play the game do find parallels in history. They do find parallels in the Weimar Republic and the rise of Hitler to become chancellor. There are certain elements, certain rules even, that clearly point to actual things happening in the past. I'm not arguing that this somehow makes it okay to include Hitler, but I'm just saying, I'm just disagreeing on the point that this is a game about our present, or that somehow just uses the past as a interchangeable backdrop. I think it's making a very, very clear point that the past is not that far away. The mistakes that have been made then are not caught in ember in history. It's something that can happen any moment.
Absolutely.
But it does draw attention by including Hitler as a character, by including this specific regime. You do draw attention to the dangers that lurk in these oh so simple and tempting decisions. You do draw attention to the fact that, compromising dangerous power for your well-intentioned gain of putting an end to somebody is in itself dangerous. And this lure of power, this desire to sort of squeeze something out, to take a risk and so on, I think getting you into this mindset, sort of, for a moment, it is the fact that it's Hitler, that person disappears, and Hitler as a historical event, so to speak, sort of emerges. And this is, I think, where it legitimizes its own use.
Well, Hitler is a concept.
Yeah.
I don't think Hitler here is conceived as the bloke Hitler.
Yeah, no.
Hitler is a concept of evil and, unweaning power and despicableness.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that's where they're evoking Hitler, because essentially that's what Hitler means to the modern consciousness now. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean, when they compare people to Hitler, what they're saying is this person is unremittingly evil. Yeah. They're not saying this guy came from Braunau in Austria and had a silly moustache. It's a synonym for all of those decadent things the evil of human souls can accomplish.
Yes, but on top of that, because I think you're very accurate, but it's this symbol of Hitler, this concept, but at the same time, the depiction of the Hitler card are reptiles. The fascists are reptiles. And the fact that it's called Secret Hitler, it draws attention to this name, the character, and so on. It does something else, and I think this might be more relevant to German players than it might be to international players. It sort of unmasks this monster, this mythologized monster of evilness that still is, present in the back of the minds of German people and German gamers especially. That, I could see German gamers clenching the moment people just mentioned the word Hitler. I mean, there was never any talk of the word Jews, unless of course you're trying to make silly jokes. The word Jew never actually occurs in the game. It's no talk about these things at all, because those are not the focus, because that would in fact arguably be a cheapening of the Holocaust.
For sure.
But it is all about this one person that on the one hand we use as a shorthand for evil. On the other hand, there's also this danger of this name, this figure becoming this mythology, this larger than life idea. And a while back we talked about Letters from Whitechapel, where I did ask you the question, why is it fine to play Jack the Ripper in Letters from Whitechapel? And you brought up the point, I believe, that he is
mythologized.
He's mythologized,
as Hitler is, and the Hitler in this game is that synonym for evil.
Yes, but
he isn't the bloke.
But he's also undercut, I believe, in the game itself, because of the depiction, because of the inherent silliness of making them reptiles, which again, I believe is a reference to some sort of
David Icke and things.
Yeah, that kind of nonsense. It kind of, it both shows you that this mythology isn't distant. It could happen easily. Imagine you sitting at the table. People sitting at the table making decisions are not that different from actual politicians sitting at tables making decisions.
Right.
The difference basically being that somebody else will then get up, move out of the room, and enact those decisions.
And the difference is, I mean, obviously the difference is with playing a game is you get up and you grab a drink. But here I think it's asking you to think about how people can be pulled away from their path for good intentions.
Yes, I think that is definitely part of it. Yes, I think that's the main draw for the liberals when they play the game. We'll talk about this in the
But if you look at the current situation, there are certain people saying the system is so corrupted that maybe if Trump gets in, he'll shake things up enough that it'll change things. And that's from good intentions, but what they don't realise...
That's utterly frightening,
he'll usher the end of the bloody world, because, possibly, Hitler didn't have nuclear weapons. Trump obviously does.
Well, and this would in this hypothetical scenario. Yes.
And this game models those things, and I think that's interesting.
Well, and ultimately I think the question, coming back to the question, is it okay to include Hitler in the game? Generally, you need to be careful, yes. And I think in this case, despite being from the guys who, or at least one of them being the guys behind Cards Against Humanity, the irreverence you mentioned there, it does not detract from its use of Hitler. There's a delicate use there. There's a very conscious use of how it's depicted, how it's used, and how it's included in the gameplay itself. And personally, I'm okay with this. I'm not making a judgment on anybody else, but I sat down, I played it, and I did not feel awkward, I did not feel bad, I did not feel filthy or anything, which is something that some other games have actually succeeded in. I feel that Secret Hitler does as much justice to this concept of Hitler as it possibly deserves.
Agreed.
So, what did you think of my interactive, candid photo montage?
Well, it was certainly an experience.
So, Georgios, give us a brief précis of your experience of the game and how this game differs from the Resistance, because it's very bloody similar.
It is very similar, yes. You have two teams working against each other. I think the obvious difference is the way the information is spread out. In Resistance, you have the voting, which is central, and then you have the mission itself, which is sort of like some sort of more definite, tangible form of information. In Secret Hitler, you have the policy deck. You have two people who have access to up to 3 cards. The first player, the president, has access to top 3 cards, discards one unseen, or unseen by everybody else but him. And then the chancellor picks one of the 2 cards they have and discard the other one. So, and then the lying starts, or the claims start. I got this card, you gave me that card, you gave me two fascist policies, no I didn't, I gave you a choice, and so on and so forth. There's an argument to be made that you have to rely basically on figuring out who of 2 people is lying, who isn't. The voting mechanism in Secret Hitler doesn't give you quite as much information as the one in Resistance does. That's basically, I think the biggest difference, I think the defining difference that really makes it gives it a different feel is not actually the deck, but the abilities you unlock that give you one-time special powers. Obviously, I mentioned in the synopsis that towards the end you start eliminating people from the game, which is was a huge deal. Psychologically, huge deal, because at this point you have player elimination creeping into the game, which famously excluded player elimination from its original design. From Werewolf to Resistance, player elimination was gone. Yep. And now from the Resistance to Secret Hitler, you introduce player elimination in a tiny, tiny moment. And I think it's very, very cleverly done. It's very, very, very well done. It leads to some interesting emotional and mental acrobatics that you find yourself in, where you basically go, do I give this player these cards, even though I might run the risk of being executed then? And I think the special abilities, how you unlock them, when to best unlock them, are what make the game really interesting. I think the most surprising element about playing this game was that even though it scales quite well from, I think, 4 or 5 to 10, it is very, very different in each player count.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the 10-player version we played was funny, was silly, was loud, there was a lot of screaming and yelling and chatting and laughing. It was great. And as we reduced the numbers eventually, it became more and more psychological. It became more tense. It became more about plotting and strategizing. It became more about finding the right moment on when to attack somebody as a fascist player to sort of throw off suspicion, and when to just, attack and just push for a fascist law because you need to push these laws to win the game. I think, that was my biggest surprise with this game, that it became more thinky, more about, tension, not release, difficult, trying to sort of plot out what somebody else is going to do, whose turn it's going to be, who you're going to vote up, who you're going to vote down. That makes it much, much gamier in feel than I think the Resistance manages to be.
This is really interesting because I played this game a lot in a very short period of time, and I think this game fundamentally fails. I had a lot of fun. It was really good. It's a really nice, refreshing reworking of the Resistance, essentially. It adds some things in that are really interesting, that provide you with information, because these games are all about how the information is distributed.
Right.
And it provides you with information in different interesting ways with the policy cards, but it allows this information to be false, for you to make false assumptions. And this is where the fun of these games, when you have these ideas that become concrete ideas that are revealed to be wrong, right? Mm-hmm. The problem is, I have a general rule about games, whether they be these sort of laissez-faire social deduction games, where the rules are sort of quite loose, or these very tight structured Euro games. Decisions have to be interesting. Decisions have to have consequences. And we played this together how many times? 8 times that night or something? 8 times, 9 times in a row. The entire night we played this game. Which means, if you're talking about the game being fun, it certainly succeeds at that. But I have a higher bar for games. They not only need to be fun, they have to be satisfying. And to some degree that means intellectually satisfying. The problem is with this game, the decisions are too bloody easy. So there's this idea, which is supposed to be, this mimicking Turkey's vote of a Christmas aspect, which is really interesting, which drew me to the game. That if you get a fascist and a liberal policy and you're a liberal, you might be inclined to play the fascist policy, to get the special ability to do something at the table. In all of those games, did not see any reason to ever, if you're a liberal, to ever play a fascist policy. You play a liberal game, we played it 8 or 9 times, the fascists didn't even come close to winning once.
Well, yeah, they did come close once, yeah. You're right. It was very, very slight. It seemed slanted towards the liberals, yeah.
Very slightly, very, very
slanted.
100% of the time the liberals won in a quite a big sample set, right? And that seemed to me that whenever you would get a liberal policy, you just play it. You just play it because you could work up to 5 or 6 or however many you've got to get. Liberal policies, straight away, win the game in 10 minutes, we've won. By the end, everyone sitting around the table went, that was fun, but I get a fascist. Firstly, if I got a liberal card, I was bored, because liberals don't do much. Secondly, if I got a fascist card, it's fun being the fascist, having to lie, but I know I'm not going to win. That's why the game failed for me. Its conception is beautiful. Its execution, in terms of how it's made, is lovely. But it fundamentally fails because the decisions are just too bloody easy, and it's too weighted in one way.
Let me give me the freedom of first giving you my completely undiplomatic answer and then be more serious for a while. You're wrong.
Explain.
No, I understand. I was set in the same game. I had a very similar experience. It was fun. The liberals kept winning. It seemed very difficult for the fascists to win. And you're right. It was much more interesting to play as a fascist. I think in a smaller group I played it afterwards, I realized something that was not apparent to me in the larger group when we played it, because I was getting carried away by the fun, obviously. In that the fascists have to plot right away. The fascists do not have the luxury of just coasting by, I'll see what happens. I'll go with the flow. I'll see what the mood is like, what I'm going to do. I think this guy is looking kind of shifty. The fascists plot right away. They need to start plotting like crazy. They need to go, right, this is this turn. This is going to happen this turn. They need to plot right away. They need to be aware that they need to reveal themselves as soon as possible. It's an instinct we all have from other social deduction games. Lay low, throw off suspicion. You do not do that in Secret Hitler. It's absolutely vital that you just do not give a crap. You're fascist, be fascist. Not in the way you interact with people. But when you get down to making a decision, don't even try to hide it. You have enough opportunity to throw off suspicion, to argue violently, but there's absolutely no point, mechanically speaking, to not push for fascist policies. Always try to get a fascist president in, and the fascist president should always discard, on average, they get 2 red cards, 1 blue card, always discard the blue card, never give a choice, always argue. It's very straightforward, and this is where it becomes interesting, in that when you start plotting, because what we found in the game we played together is that the liberal group, the liberals were getting, complacent.
Right.
They were getting complacent about the decisions, they were getting complacent about everything, and this is what the fascist team needs to pounce on. In smaller groups, I've realized that the plotting really pays off. Because it doesn't matter if you know that one guy is a fascist, or if you trust somebody is a fascist, you don't need to convince the entire group to vote in this team of, this 2-player team into office. What you need to do is you just need to get enough people on your side. You find the weak link. And this is where I think the game really shines. It's so easy to see like this cutthroat fascist mentality at play there. You find the weak link and you hammer them.
You see, and that's really interesting because I didn't see the strategies in the game at all, played it a lot. It just seemed to me the decisions very easy to make. And
I agree.
And okay, we'll go on to design because the point I have now is a specific design issue.
Alright, so how about this? You take a tenuous grasp of reality, a lot of condescension, at least 4 cups, and a slow-wittedness masked through pretensions of prolixity.
Well, that's you, isn't it?
Yeah, it's design.
I have a specific design issue with this game. I don't think the distribution is right.
Okay.
I think it's too easy because you have these set of policies and they're massively weighted towards fascist policies, right?
Well, not massively, but notably, yeah.
Well, this is the problem, you see. It's too easy to get liberal policies, it's too easy to play liberal policies, and it's too easy to gallop out in front, and therefore make it just impossible for the fascists to pull it back.
But that was absolutely not my experience at all, because if you look at the...
Well, you sat there and played bloody 8 games with me. It was absolutely your experience.
No, it wasn't, because, it was in that sense that, when people ended up making decisions, they always held back and didn't want to reveal themselves as fascists. That was a mistake. But when you look at the numbers, the further one team gets to the front, they change, the probability simply changes. You have six liberal policies, you need 5 to win. You need almost all liberal policies out of the game, out of the deck to win the game as a liberal.
Can you answer a question then?
Yes.
I'm going to ask you, obviously. You can't answer it before I ask you it, obviously.
That's true. Then I'm going to say no.
Then, if the distribution is right, and if what you say is right, that the game fundamentally works...
It self-balances, yes.
Why? 100% of the time. So how, right, the fascists have won with you once, right, in the games that you've played?
With my weekly group, yes, we played it, I think, 2 or 3 times, and they won one of them.
The fascists won once. In the games we played 8 or 9 games, the fascists didn't win at all.
Yeah.
So this is about a 5-6% win rate in a binary game, in a game with 2 sides.
Yeah.
If it's so well balanced, why is this the case?
Because there's such a thing as groupthink, and B, I think we've all played it with people who are familiar with social deduction games. We have instincts, and they do not work with Secret Hitler. Like I said in the experience bit, you do not want to stay low as a fascist.
But therefore,
because you can't. This is not a valid strategy in this game. What you need to do is you work the table. You don't work the rules. You don't work the percentages. The percentages are basically, if you really want to simplify the whole thing, the policies you draw, the policies you play, that's a die roll.
But the thing is, right, this is why, and you might disagree with me on this, you probably will disagree with me on this, but this comes to a design issue. Regardless of whether you think this is right or not, perception of a game is a huge part of as to whether you think the game is good, right? Yeah. And if you perceive you have no chance, then you're not going to enjoy the game. What I'm trying to say is that what the design has to do, the rigorousness of the design, what the game designer has to do is facilitate an experience, right? Facilitate you liking the game as a consumer. And the fact is, the game has to be responsible for pulling that average away from 95-5 to 70-30. Even 80-20 would be better, but this it fails somewhere.
I don't see it like that, because I think you're discounting the fact that a lot of the result of a game depends heavily on the gamers involved and the people involved.
Well, too much. This is the point. This is why I think the design fails, because obviously it does too much in this. Because the 8 or 10 people that we played with that night walked away, and I guarantee you, all of them were thinking, yeah, that was fun. I don't think I'd play again, though, because it's too weighted in one direction. That's a design failure, right?
Well,
Has to be.
I can tell you one person did not, and that was me. I went away thinking, I need to play this game again because I know what the fascists need to do, because the fascist role is so much more interesting because of the way it's so plotted, so tight, it's so tense,
and
it's so what's the word I'm looking for? You're forced to be a Machiavellian bastard with your friends in a way that I never, interestingly enough, never had with the resistance, because there my options, my strategies, my venue on how to act, how to influence the game were always obscure to me. I could never figure out how to manipulate people in the resistance. I know exactly how to manipulate people in Secret Hitler.
You see, we need to play this again then, because it's interesting. I unfortunately, while I have great faith in you, I think you'll fail.
Yes, maybe, but the point is not whether I fail or not. The point is I feel, because basically what you're saying is a game's rules design should make sure that everybody, regardless of skill, regardless of experience, has the same chance at winning, and that's nonsense.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Well, you said 50-50. You wanted 80-20.
I don't believe I mentioned once 50-50.
No,
did I?
You said 80-20 at least.
But there needs to be a feeling. The game designer is facilitating an experience, facilitating a good time. The fact is, 95-5, when you have a group of people playing a game over a large sample set, when it's 95-5, that has to be a failure in design. And the problem is, what they're doing is they're making everyone else. Right, I'm going to tell you something now. I'm going to come clean. Right? We dealt out the cards for Secret Hitler the one time, and at one point I showed a card or announced what I was, right? And I said, oh, fuck, we've got to reshuffle again, sorry. You know why? I did that deliberately.
Yeah.
Because I lived in it. It was liberal. And I can't go through another game being liberal. I'm going to accidentally show my card, so hopefully I'll get a fucking thing. That is failing. That is failing. The majority of the people playing the game. That's wrong, right?
Well, I think it comes down to something we had this dialogue that this reminds me of. You said somewhat facetiously, but some with a serious undercurrent, that you feel the game is more important than the people. The people don't matter. And this is a case where I think both our views are sort of exemplified in our understanding and our experience of this game. If you discount the people, if you marginalize the effect the group has on the game, then yes, I can absolutely understand why you consider the game a failure, because the game will not carry the weight for you. I, on the other hand, feel that the weight of a successful game rests on the shoulders of the players.
They have to share the burden. And this is my point here. I don't feel the design of the game carries its weight. I don't think it does its part in the way that it shifts all that onto the players and leaves a lot of players feeling unsatisfied.
Well, I didn't feel that way. I think this game does quite a few things right. It charges up the narrative when you talk because of the terminology. The numbers work. The idea of, I want to shoot Hitler in the face because that's how I want to win the game, or I want to push for liberal policies. I think, and to be fair, I think you've been throwing around numbers a lot, but we've played 8 games with more or less the same people, and I played 3 games with different set of people. If we compare numbers, I had a success rate of the fascists of 33%, no, 50% even. I'm not quite sure if we played 2 or 3 times, but somewhere between 33 and 50% win rate for the fascists, and you had 5%, which is fair, which is a difference. But on average, that does not mean that the game is not pulling its weight.
Well, obviously, I haven't played it with huge amounts of groups, and I haven't played it with huge disparate amounts of groups.
Right.
But, and I think this is why I think my point has validity.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why, I think we have fundamental different attitudes towards games. I believe the purpose of design is to legislate for a fairly consistent experience every time. I think a failure in design is when you have a large disparity in experience, in quality of experience. And this is why now.
But wait, let's sidetrack here, because I don't see this actually working with the stereotypical Eurogame played with an experienced and a less experienced player. Because the more experienced player will always win over the experienced player. You will always have a strongly slanted percentage of winning of an experienced Eurogamer towards an inexperienced Eurogamer.
No, but a well-crafted Eurogame will deliver a satisfying experience to every player. They won't deliver a victory, and they will reward skill at the game. But what they will is they'll legislate for a satisfying experience in which every player is going to construct something and deliver that at the end.
Right.
This, unfortunately, no, I admire the game. I admire the conception, and I think the minds behind this are very sharp, and I think they're very serious, and they are much maligned by the fact that their most successful project is a bit fatuous and frat boyish, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think in terms of the design legislating the experience, I feel it fails.
I don't think it does at all. I think it gives you tools. I think it sets out strategies. And it's up to you to actually utilize them. And when you do, I think the game does even out. I think we just didn't have the experience with this. I do vaguely remember a few games when I still tried to get Avalon on the table. We had huge discussions about the end game of Avalon, in that the bad guys always had 33% chance to just win the game on a dime, basically. They felt this was unfair. It should be down to the skill of the players. And to some extent, I did agree. And I feel in this game, this is true as well. Who wins depends on the players. And I will agree with you that it's rather easy for liberals who play straightforward without, big understanding of the game to win the game against fascists who do not pull their weight. Yes. And the game itself will not put an end to that. If you have a challenging role and you don't play it well, you're going to lose a lot of the time. And I don't think it's the fault of the game.
Playing this made me want to play.
I'm going to go first on this.
Go on.
And this is a very fatuous answer, but I have been developing a real sort of distaste for social deduction games over the last couple of years.
Yes.
And this game made me want to play literally anything that is not a social deduction game, that does not have the same tropes and the same traits. This game is not original. It's beautifully conceived. The ideas are smart, but the game is another cookie-cutter social deduction game that is fun, but it just don't float my boat anymore.
All right, fair enough. I still like social deduction games. I still like One Night Ultimate Werewolf. I still like Resistance. I really like Secret Hitler. It made me want to play Avalon again, mostly because it's a different flavor of the same experience, slightly less tense, but and looser than the strategies in Secret Hitler. And I feel that I like the general experience of a social deduction game. I like the game to be sometimes a little bit tighter, as it is in Secret Hitler, and sometimes a bit looser, as it is with Avalon. And I like switching between those two styles, like chocolate and vanilla, both ice creams, at least when I talk about them. And sometimes I want this, sometimes I want the other, but I like them both.
So should people buy Secret Hitler, Georgios?
Yes, they should. I'm going to do something that you did as well, and I'm going to spoiler. This is, and I cleverly did it at the end of the review, so we're going to talk about it. This is still in the running for my game of the year, because I think it is really, really good. Really like it, and people should buy it, provided A, they're not put off by the fact that it says Hitler on the box rather prominently, and B, they felt Resistance is fun, but I need something that gives me more structure, more clear objectives, a better understanding of what it is I'm supposed to do. Resistance doesn't quite offer that in the game design, but I think Secret Hitler does.
Secret Hitler is a fun generator. There's no question. Secret Hitler gets people together and gets them talking. No question. We had some new people in the group who'd just come to the game night for the first time. It's easy to include them after you play a game like Secret Hitler. Secret Hitler is one of the better social deduction games. If that's what you're looking for, a generator of fun, buy this game. If you're looking for a rigorous design that will legislate for a satisfaction of experience, then don't, because it doesn't. So how are you going to celebrate Halloweenos, Georgios?
I haven't thought about that, actually. Probably nice cup of cocoa.
I'm going to stare into the abyss and pretend it's not what I do every bloody evening, Georgios.
So, black tea for you then.
How do they contact us?
Yes, do contact us. We love emails. We don't get enough of them, as in any. Do contact us at infoperfected@gmail.com. Write us some questions that you like answered. Tell us how great we are, or tell us how great we are not, and we might be sad. But write to us. I like reading things. We're also on Facebook, which is Perfect Information Podcast. You can find us on Facebook under that pseudonym. And
pseudonym is a word.
It is that. It is now.
They're cousins to the Moomins.
No, it's basically a name that we are soon going to give ourselves. Then we have the Twitters. We have Ben, who predominantly tweets at InfoPerfected, and we have myself, who occasionally tweets at PerfectedInfo, both on Twitter, and that's basically it. As far as Twitter goes, we have Instagrams, which is a nice way of looking at us playing games. If you want sort of sneak peeks as to what we're going to talk about at some point in the future.
In Los Futurano.
Why are you smiling so smugly when you completely butcher the English language? It's supposed to be your language.
I've been learning Spanish, Georgios, and that was a Spanish term I learned, Los Futurano, which is the future in Spanish.
Yes. Yeah, I dispute both the learning and the Spanish. That was basic most of it. No, we have a website. We have a website, and the website looks like it always did, but it has content. It has content, people. Every Monday we release either a big show or a small show for you. Last week we had Essen reviews. The week before
more Essen reviews.
Yes, and I just realized I said reviews. I should have said interviews. It's the same mistake you did. So basically, we had a lot of interviews. We also have every Wednesday we have a written review of a game that we have played, or at least one of us, and then we're going to write about it. We do have contributors now, writers who, for some reason, decided to publish with us.
So, English game designer of Snowdonia and Guilds of London, the inimitable Tony Boydell, does a column every 2 weeks, and
does a colon, yes.
The owner of Pelgrane Press, the people who published Achtung Cthulhu,
Achtung!
The Dracula Dossier, Kat Tobin. She's also writing a column for us about the RPGs.
The RPGs. Basically, the RPGs. It's something that we will look into at some point once we figure out what that acronym stands for. Is it Rocket Propelled Grenade?
That's what it is. So, if you think that this is worth anything, the website, the walking, the talking, the listening, we have
buttons, we have micro badges, we have guilds.
And we have a donate button on the website. You can click there, the money goes straight into Georgios's account, and he spends it on Retsina and long beard hats.
And also, since Christmas is coming up, prawns.
Say goodnight, Georgios.
No.